So here we go. Women are avoiding AI. Will their careers suffer? Harvard Business School. Tati, we have talked about this on numerous occasions, and I'm going to position this in a way that allows you to go in any direction you want to go. But generally speaking, do you feel that women versus men in the business environment, do they maybe sometimes wait until all the boxes are checked versus men sometimes have a little bit of a, I don't know, inflated sense of self and confidence where they might not wait until, maybe only 60% of the boxes are checked? And let's start there about the confidence dimension of this and kind of what your initial take was on this article, which I think had some very interesting data that aligns with AI, but also this broader topic about men versus women and so on and so forth in the workplace.
I think this is something I'm very passionate about, but I would, just to summarize what the article says, and we'll share the link to it, but women are adopting AI tools at a 25% lower rate than men. Across these studies, they involved 140,000 people globally, and it was across various industries. So this is serious data. And the gender gap persists even when access is equal. So given the same opportunity to use, which very basic, right? ChatGPT. Women entrepreneurs in Kenya were still less likely, 13% less likely to even touch it, to even try the tool. And that goes on and on. There's a lot of data that are really, really interesting. Only 42% of ChatGPT's users are women, and 27% of the mobile app downloads come from women. And I'm using this just to round this about first that they have some pretty serious data about it. One of the things they say in there that I thought was interesting, and I'll speak to the first part in a second, but that one of the hypotheses is that women may be avoiding AI due to concerns about ethics and the fear of being judged as cheating or lacking expertise if they use AI assistance. So they're not just, which then it sent me to a place of, us, and by us I say, generalizing, and this is going to be, I apologize in advance for generalizing men versus women, but we're going to use these general terms here where, we have to be, it's known that you have to prove yourself twice as hard and in general in the workplace in order to be considered to be at the same level. But it's not just external, and this is one of the things that proves that this is also something that's been internalized, right? So there's this piece on the perfectionism parallel, if you will, which is this I started thinking, could this hesitation to use AI be a mirror to something that's very well documented that everyone knows about, that women often apply for jobs when meeting 100% of the qualifications, when there's a lot of data to show that men will apply for the same job but about 60%. That's the sweet spot there, right? So women could be waiting to fully understand AI and feeling like they know it, right? The expertise. There's a piece on this that talks a lot about, and I went into a rabbit hole reading about this topic, and there's a piece on expertise. And when women don't feel like they're enough experts to it, they don't want to drive an initiative on something they don't feel they have expertise on. And that's part of what I'd love to talk to you both about today, is that this is going to, in this specific situation, is going to create all sorts of problems. We have a situation here, whereas the obvious on the skills gap that's widening there, very real situation on skills gaps widening, that's going to affect representation, that's going to have a compound effect on wage gaps, that is a very unfortunate self-enforcing cycle. So you're more alienated the more it becomes more developed. You use less and less and less of it because you fall further behind. The very important role that I believe women have to play in the shaping of AI ethics, because we have to be at that table, we have to be part of that conversation, because we need diverse perspectives in that case, and it's not just women, it's a variety of diverse perspectives. And I think that there's more than anything, an organizational responsibility as women's leaders to be bringing this to the organizations that we are managing, that we are leading. So yeah, I said a lot. So I love that.
I wanted you to kick it off here, because look, I'll say it from I'll say something that probably is going to be like stating the obvious, but every future leader is going to have to become very proficient at managing people and using and deploying AI tools and managing AI or digital labor, however you want to describe it. And you are not going to learn that by reading it in a book. I can guarantee it. And you certainly don't want to hesitate, because there is no playbook. Nobody's got this figured out. Good luck. Anybody that says they do, not really sure where they're coming from, but they don't, because it's impossible. It's moving so fast. So Steve, help me, kind of understand your perspective on this, in relation to the risk of waiting and not jumping into this arena and starting to use these tools and experiment with agents and all this good stuff, and the implications, for those that do wait.
Yeah, I think the risks are high, and even in the article, it talks about how these gaps for women, could potentially hurt the economy, right? Because I think the adoption of AI is going so fast that it's become more prevalent in everyday life, and certainly in everyday business. So I think there's definitely an aspect of new tools coming out, and those tools being able to be leveraged across all different areas of business. And certainly I think there's an aspect of, women being able to adopt that within the workforce as well. So, I think, I have two daughters. I can certainly see at a young age that the younger generations are using AI more and more. That's going to become more commonplace for younger generations. But I think we're still at the early stage of the innovation curve with AI, and it'll just increase over the next few years.
Here, totally agree. And Tati, go ahead. I didn't mean to jump in there. Go ahead.
No, can I ask you both a question? Because
Yeah.
I think that Steve just touched on something that's really, really interesting, which is the intervention timing on this is really critical, right? So you have this early stage intervention in education, professional development, that they have to happen in order for younger generation, especially, to be so these AI disparity does not become entrenched, right? Mm-hmm. Part of like, this is as we've seen in so many professions in history, right? That they become entrenched for various reasons. And looking at this now and seeing that some industries like healthcare or education that are being the transformation with AI is so fast right now, and it's going to only pick up further and further. All of our conversations about other industries and retail specifically. I would love to hear both your thoughts, and what do you do about it today? Right, you're a woman, and I know a little bit of that answer because I started getting into a lot of different things because of both of you. So I know a little bit about
it's your fault, Alec.
But I want to hear from you, like what do you do about it? And what's if it's not, because there are some great courses out there, there's some other things, but that's not really going to make the difference that it needs to make. How do you change that narrative? How do you feel if it takes feeling more comfortable and more in having more knowledge to make that jump, to feel confident as a leader to make that jump, or as a younger person, that's the way you're going to build your career. What are some of the steps? What are some of the things that these women should be looking at?
I'm going to let Steve go first. I tend to talk too much. Steve? Unless you want me to go, because I'll go.
Yeah, I think you should go first. I don't really have a response to that. Maybe. Yeah, maybe you can ask the question again, Tati. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of a cold, so I'm just kind of battling through my cough as we go.
Oh, good. No, the question is from being, for the women that are listening, that are thinking, or for the men that are working with these women, how do you get, for the leaders, men and women that are worried about this and that are, want to take action? What would be some of the things that you say? How do you get started on this? How do you because we're not talking that what's unique about this is also, it's not formal education, right? You're not going to get your MBA in AI. I'm sure there's a school out there that's offering this, but Please
Sure,
don't
there's
go
lots
do
of
that.
courses online too.
There's lots of courses online, and there's a lot of really good ones, by the way, that I've taken some myself. But that's not alone enough. So what else in your minds is something that can be? What? How do you mitigate for this? How do you walk forward?
I'm going to jump in, Steve, so that give you something to react to, but also I'm sure you've got your ideas as well. Where my head goes to is show me, don't tell me. Right? You got to have leaders that are humble, confident, that get into working session environments, virtually or otherwise. Say, hey, we're going to spend 90 minutes, and here's what the objective is. We've got this specific workflow and this specific goal, and we're going to introduce like a hackathon, right? Classic, don't reinvent the wheel. Do a hackathon associated with a specific business objective and bring tools to bear. So, for example, if you want to stand up a really lightweight application that can solve a very specific problem within a business, bring in Lovable, bring in Cursor, bring in Replit, right? Rock and roll. If you want to maybe create like the gnarliest long form blog post, bring in, Claude. You know how good, great I feel about Claude, for example. And don't assume anybody's ever used it before, and show them how to prompt engineer and do it together, right? Right in a live environment, record it. Asynchronously enable people who perhaps don't want to reveal that they don't understand this stuff as well as they would like to, or maybe they have fear that if they reveal that they don't, that could be a problem for them from a career perspective. And there's other people that might not know what is and isn't appropriate to be, used in terms of the tools. So I'm a big believer in, I don't think you want to, tell someone. I think you want to show them, but most importantly, you got to lead from the front. And you got to do it yourself, and then you bring your team with you, But that's just my nature. So I don't know, Steve, if you agree, disagree, or somewhere in between. But
No, I
I
agree.
think you should do it.
I think all this stuff is so new. All these tools are so fresh that you just gotta try, right, and try before you jump right in, right, and try before you buy, and I think ultimately it's really getting hands on things and playing around with it. I think that goes for everybody. I still think we are kind of early on. I think all of our worlds are revolving around AI, but there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of the business world that's still just catching up and understanding and doesn't know about Cursor or Lovable or others. So I think there's going to be a shift in the next year or two to really create the user experiences that allow for, generally, business users to understand, train, and learn AI within their everyday tools. You're starting to see it with Google and Microsoft, with Gemini and Copilot, and that's just going to continue to be prevalent, and it's going to be baked into all of our other common tools that we see, whether or not that's CRM or HR. So I think the tools that are out there right now are very tech heavy, and so it's going to take individuals that really want to dive into that tech to dive deep. So, but yeah, I agree with you, Alec, for sure. It's really getting your hands on it and leading from a place of experience, right? Jump into it, learn it, and educate yourself.
Yeah, give it a shot. Tati, what do you think?
What I think, and I'm going to speak from, I love that you guys mentioned that, because it is true that you really learn this as you try and as you go and as you get connected. I will add something that neither of you mentioned, but is really also getting the right, I'm calling it a mentorship, but it could be a mentorship through following the right people on LinkedIn, on X, and reading the articles and making this a priority to stay on top of things, which just gonna say that you can also listen to your podcast, Alec, and get the same.
I mean, I was hoping you might give me a plug right there. I was like, waiting for it.
That same information, but the truth, that's one of the things that you advised me to do early on, and it's been incredibly helpful to understand the different perspectives and even things. And there's a variety of things I don't fully understand yet, but the fact that understanding where to look for those things and how to get up to speed, and because it's moving so fast. So that has to be a supplement to that Maybe you're taking the AI course. Maybe I'm taking right now an AI course for ethics in the boardroom, and how do board members, how do board directors deal with setting what those guardrails will be. And there's some really interesting content out there. But in addition to that, I think that really being plugged into what's happening, because it's changing so fast. But I would say from a leadership perspective, 3 things that really come up to my mind as you have to do it. You mentioned one of them, which is around the psychological safety around experimentation, which is a great leadership's skill set and competency for starters, right? Creating, but in this space specifically where you are, so how do you structure these AI initiatives around collaborative group projects? How do you evaluate based on learning and growth rather than immediate performance, right? This is, we got to hit this. Like we don't know yet because we are experimenting. So take that from the same perspective, have a little bit of the R&D mentality with how you're doing this. I think there's a really important piece in communicating the career development path for AI and the need for this, because that's another thing that there's a quiet part out loud, right? In a couple of years, I was just speaking with someone who's a CEO, just took a job as a CEO of a business this couple of weeks ago, and is telling me, she said, I don't think AI will be optional in 2 years, that they're going to be looking at this as a mandatory piece on any executive resume or anyone's resume, right? That's going to be your competitive advantage. So don't miss out on that, but framing that in a different way within the companies. And I would say the third one is, which is where a lot of companies that I'm also hearing, which is a conversation for another day as well, that are still telling people, you can't use AI here, right? We don't use AI because we don't have all of the ethics sorted out. And we don't have the guidelines, and people are cheating, and this is not, and we get incorrect information. Get off your chair and create the guidelines. Let's go do this, right? That's not that complicated. And you have a lot of really smart people out there that can help you figure that out and what that needs to look like. So as a leader, the only way that you're really going to create that safe environment is you actually create a safer environment by putting those guidelines in place and being clear about what's okay and what's not. So I think that all of those things could help clarify what this accountability and this responsibility is as well, right?
Without a doubt. I'm going to, so 2 things to build on that, or 3, I guess. One is, I couldn't agree more with the fact that we're so early and that this is going to become a mandatory. The second is, just think of it as an Excel spreadsheet, right? I think everyone in business is generally, expected to be able to, work their way around, an Excel spreadsheet. So think of large language models and artificial intelligence and, the root technology and core as Excel, right? And think of it as, how do you use Excel within the confines of your job description and otherwise? And then the third thing is, there was a killer quote that I saw from Gary Tan, and he basically said the following. He said, "It was net good for society when heavy machinery replaced shovels. AI is heavy machinery for knowledge and creative work." And so for anyone that's hesitating in any capacity, and I'm sure there's all sorts of different reasons, just think about it in terms of, this is the next Excel spreadsheet. And every day that you can step into it, use it, learn, fall down, get back up, and then create 5 to 10x the output in a very specific territory of your workflow, that adds up. And if you don't do it, and others do, I don't think that's going to be a good thing for you in the next 6 to 12 months alone. And things are moving so fast. So just assume it's an Excel spreadsheet on steroids to give you that mental model, and then just give it a shot. Just dig in and try it out, It's my 2 cents. I should have a question behind that, but I don't know.
No, I completely agree with what you're saying, but I will add 2 things to that made me think. That one thing, as I'm remembering, this was a long time ago, that when Excel came out, some people were really proud that they didn't need Excel to do the calculations. I don't know if you remember this, but I just had this memory pop up. I was like, all right, how'd that turn out for you, and why, right? So, but and the other thing to this is that the piece that I keep hitting when we're talking about this and speaking with colleagues and retailers and folks in the hospitality industry is the same. You're not going to have the time you did to learn Excel.
I couldn't agree more. I'm going to jump in on one. So I'm not going to name names, but I really hope this guy watches this and remembers. So I was at the NBA draft, over a year ago, and was talking with this guy and his team and so on and so forth within the confines of data science. And after the conversation wrapped up, he pulled me aside. He looked at me. He's like, "Look, I don't know. I'm not supposed to admit this, but I'm like a black belt in Excel. I don't know if I need all this machine learning and AI stuff." And he kind of laughed when he said it. And I was like, "You can't say that publicly." I was like, "You could be as good as you want to be in Excel, but you don't want to take an Excel, tool and put it up against some of this horsepower that's available to you today." And he laughed. And of course he agreed, but he did remind me that he's a black belt in Excel. So I won't ever forget that. And I won't name him, but I hope he watches this and reaches out, which will be funny.
As a process geek, I will make this public admission that I was a black belt in Excel at one point myself. So
You're on his team.
But really quickly understanding that, it has been a while that we understood that Excel is not fulfilling all of the things that we need, right? So that's the other piece. But that's if you only walk away with one thing that you remember about everything we said today, is that you're not going to have the time to catch up like you did with other things. And that's one of the things I'm telling my retailer friends on, you're not going to be able to wait for technology. You're not going to be able to be a fast follower. You can't, it's not like the CRM systems from 5 years ago, whatever, when you implemented that you won't have that time. You will lose the market share, and sometimes forever. And that's the piece that to me is all of the alarm bells that went off when I read this article.
I agree. I completely agree. And I think, leaving it on that note is perfect. It's like, the good news is the best day to start was yesterday. The second best is today, but you got to do it yourself. I think that's the one thing I would always stress is like, you got to get your hands in the dirt, because you can't really understand the power of this stuff until you actually do it yourself. And then you can provide the leadership for others. So Steve, Tati, as always, a pleasure. And I'm really, really excited for this content to get out for all sorts of reasons. So thanks again.
Thanks, Alec.
Thank you.
See y'all.